Welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your host, Theodore Stuffingsworth, and for my first real video, I thought I'd read a bit from my journal. This was what you all know as the beginning of the series, The Dreamy Adventures of Theodore. But keep in mind, it is a journal, not a story. It is unedited, and I'm not as talented a writer as DC. But with that being said, let's get weird. I was overflowing with lava-like rage. Over a decade of mindlessly wandering through the foggy lands of corrupted childhood memories that made up the darkly enchanted realm of Halcyon had passed. Every day was the exact same. Wake up, take a piss, brush my teeth and take a shower, get dressed, do chores, work out, say hi to my neighbors, cook food and eat it, take a shit, watch a little television, take another shower, and then go back to bed. Every fucking day. And I did so, mechanically, feeling no real emotion, but with a blank smile plastered across my stupid face and fake thoughts in my head. But suddenly the facade was ripped away, and it seemed as though we were all simultaneously waking from some strange, shared nightmare, one that lasted over 10 fucking years. We were all exhausted. Hungry? No. Famished, we were. Starving for justice, or in my case, vengeance, from the wicked witch that locked us away within the shrouded mind and broken heart of my long-lost best friend. We had all just remembered him after 10 years, but our hearts all ached for him as if it had only been a day. He wasn't here with us. He had never been, so where was he? Actually, where was she? For all those years, we could hear her evil cackles echoing along the chilling breezes. We could feel the earth itself pulsating with her vile magic. Her sickly, haunting energy pervaded the very air that we breathed. But we had not laid eyes on her, since we were violently pulled out of our homes by vibrantly colored and madly spiraling vortexes conjured by her most powerful curse. Despite that, over a decade had passed, but I still could not erase that glowing amber glare or that wicked grin from my mind, the stench of her fetid green skin from my nose. Even under her spell, my sleep was restless and plagued by nightmares. In my heart, I was still terrified of her. But what choice did I have? If you woke up one day and realized that you'd been living in a dream, within a dream, what would you do? If all your accomplishments, your home, and everything you owned weren't actually real, how would you feel? Would your mind and heart be so broken that all you could do was go back to pretending? Or would you try to break out of this box someone stuffed you in? Some of us chose the former option, it seemed. While I met Mizu, Captain Blackheart, Saluna, Decibel, and Terra at Penumbra's black floating castle, the blatant spaces between them saddened me. Khaldun, who was afraid of practically everything, well, his absence wasn't surprising. But Solstice, she was brave and defiant. While it was true that we hadn't seen her in a while, I still expected to see her there for the final battle. A dark and grim silence surrounded me and my childhood friends. My poofy brown tail twitched with anxiousness as we turned our attention to the army of imps awaited us there, guarding an ethereal staircase that led up to the witch's lair. These were her usual expendable lackeys, a seemingly endless tribe of simple-minded and violent creatures that lived in Halcyon. This proved our suspicions correct. Penumbra was quietly awaiting our arrival. She knew that we were no longer under her spell. But why? What caused it to break after all this time? After a decade of feeling nothing, all I could feel was rage. Before the humanoid mermaid Mizu could draw her sword, before the dragon Saluna could breathe her fire, I had already leaped into battle. My bear claws shredded into their tender purple flesh, causing blood to splatter all over my hairy, toned pecs. I ripped through the first of them with ease, and immediately chased after those who fled in fear. Then I continued to eviscerate them, ignoring their pleads for mercy. Soon, all was silent. and my ire was still not quenched. As the red ran down my glistening abs, I stood up straight, surrounded by the bleeding bodies of my enemies, some still choking and struggling to cling to life. Glaring up at the staircase, I clenched my teeth, and without saying a word, I stepped toward it. I could hear Mizu trying to speak to me within my mind as she and the others cautiously followed me. Her telepathy was something I had always found to be annoying, especially because when we were younger, she used to chastise me for what she called mistakes. The truth was, she just didn't think I was very smart and judged me for every choice I had ever made. Honestly, sometimes I feel like she secretly blames me for what happened to us all those years ago. Ignoring her nagging, echoing whispers of warnings and pleads for me to center myself, I pressed forward. And soon, I was within the cold stone walls of that accursed castle, or at least, Dante's memory of it. I hadn't seen him since we were cubs, but I could remember his smile with ease. His laughter echoed between my ears. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not imagine him as an adult. All of us had grown up. Surely, hopefully, he had too. Without us to comfort him, without me to protect him. And in that moment, because of those thoughts, my rage turned to sorrow and fear. "Teddy bear!" I could hear him desperately calling for me, frightened and alone. It was his nickname for me since I'm rabish and have bare ears, claws, and a tail. A little on the nose, but hey, he was like 4 years old. I had always done my best to protect him from the darkness, just like a real teddy bear. But I had failed. And that is exactly why we all ended up in Halcyon, without him. That maze of a castle had not changed since we visited its real-world counterpart as cubs. But it still proved to be quite a challenge to traverse through. Soon, however, we found ourselves in the fog-strangled courtyard, amongst dead trees and a broken fountain with demonic motifs. And before us stood Penumbra, stirring a bubbling cauldron and chuckling to herself. Already visions danced in my head of her mangled, bloody body, a weak voice whispering up at me, begging for mercy. Her absolute suffering was what I wanted, what I needed. Nothing less would have satisfied me. I took a battle stance, but Mizu placed her hand on my arm and stepped forward, stopping me. "It's over, witch," she declared, pointing her sword at her. "Your curse is broken. We are all fully aware now of who we are, and where we come from. You've lost." Penumbra continued to laugh to herself as she stirred the brightly glowing green potion before her. She didn't appear to hear a single word Mizu had said, yet alone even noticed the rest of us. After a few moments, however, her smile turned into an evil smirk, and a soft whisper poured out of her red lips. "Here, kitty, kitty." Suddenly, a young woman around my age appeared before us, immediately leaping into battle with Mizu. Her eyes were amber and glowed with the same eerie light as Penumbra's. She had the ears and tail of a cat and pirouetted around the courtyard like a ballerina, dodging attacks with ease and grace. Around her neck was a choker with a bell on it, which rang with her every movement. Surprisingly, she fought with only her claws. This was the first time I had ever seen someone do this, other than myself, of course. Within just a few seconds, the strange cat girl had bested Mizu. Before she could land the final blow, however, I jumped into the fray, stopping her claws with my own. She giggled and threw me back with shocking strength as Decibel darted toward her. Terra rushed over and helped me onto my feet. I nodded toward her, and we both turned our attention back to the battle before us. This mysterious newcomer's skills on the battlefield were quite impressive. She dodged every one of the shots from Terra's ray gun. Mizu could not land a single strike on her with her sword. She was actually faster than Decibel's flapping wings. Even I was struggling against her. Or we could have just been rusty. I don't think any of us had experienced any real combat since before the curse took hold. There was the odd maniacal imp here and there, but even a non-magical human with little to no combat skills could take them on. After a few minutes, I began to notice something. This strange cat girl. She seemed to just be playing, toying with us. She was barely nicking us here and there when she could have very well gutted us where we stood. And then it clicked. She wasn't trying to defeat us at all. She was there to keep us busy. Turning back to Penumbra, I noticed her tossing a few more ingredients into the brew. Taking a breath, I stepped away from the battle and began to slowly make my way over to her. My claws ached for her blood as I increased my speed, and I leaped toward her. Penumbra's amber eyes shot over to mine in that moment. "Belladonna," she cried. Suddenly, the cat girl shot between us, striking my face with her claws. I stumbled back, feeling a sharp pain in my eye. Pulling my hand away from my face, I saw that it was covered in blood. My blood. Blinking, I turned back to the vile witch and the cat girl, who I now knew to be Belladonna, even though all I could see was red out of my left eye. I took another battle stance. Before I could attack, however, Penumbra overturned her gigantic cauldron at me. The thick neon liquid washed over me at once, burning my flesh so fiercely that I could hear it sizzle. This was a level of pain so excruciating that I collapsed where I stood. Almost immediately, there was a din, an explosion of screams filling the air. It took a few seconds to realize that it was me. As Penumbra's mad cackles filled the fog around me, I could feel my skin melting away from my bone. It was slow and agonizing. Both my eyes were squeezed closed to keep that vile liquid from entering them, but also to keep myself from seeing the horror that I was becoming. Then the sounds came. Violent cracking all around me, accompanied by more incredible pain. After a few seconds, I realized that my bones were shattering and somehow reforming into a new shape. I was being transformed. Slowly, violently, agonizingly. After a while, I began to feel a strange, dull ache inside my body. Somehow I knew this was my internal organs. They then began to sharply sting before growing completely numb, as if they had turned to liquid themselves. Soon all was silent. I thought I was dead, but I couldn't have been, because I still felt the most horrible pains pulsating through my entire body, or at least what was left of it. It felt as if I were surrounded by some warm liquid. I thought I was still lying in that goop, but it no longer burned me. And it smelled atrocious, even worse than Penumbra's rotting skin. Now, looking back, I think it was what had become of my flesh, and at that point it began to move, quiver, pulsate. It slowly rose around me and encapsulated me like some sort of cocoon. Some of it slowly melted away as it dried out, and finally it became strangely furry or fuzzy, like I was wrapped up in a warm, comforting blanket. And then, the dream came. It seemed to be made up of memories from my childhood, but ones that never actually happened yet. Dante was there, as was Mizu. We played peacefully, explored uninhibited, and lived relatively safe and happy childhoods. There was no Penumbra hunting him. Mizu's parents actually gave a shit about her. And even my parents were there, alive, smiling, happy, watching us play. That fleeting light, that dream I had inside that cocoon, was probably the happiest I've ever been in my life. And it wasn't even real. A bright, warm light awoke me from this deep, peaceful sleep. It was the sun in a bright blue sky. I was lying on the grass outside. Birds were chirping, and the scent of spring flowers filled the air. Immediately, I knew this wasn't Halcyon. Standing up proved to be a bit difficult. It was as if I had forgotten how to move my arms and legs. And in that moment, I realized that my entire body was covered in fur. Somehow, with the help of Penumbra's unfinished potion, I had actually become a teddy bear. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Share the video if you feel so inclined. I love you guys, and I'll see you all later.